God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea.
Good morning. It's 9 o'clock. We're going to start the June 5th Douglas County Board of Commissioners meeting. Please note that there is an automatic defibrillator on the back wall behind those partitioners if anybody needs it for any reason. There's a copy of the Open Meetings Act here on the north wall of the chambers, and we ask that if you have any cell phones, please turn them off or silence them. With that, we ask everybody in the chamber to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. With that, we will call the Board of Equalization meeting to order. Roll call.
Commissioner Borgeson is absent. Commissioner Boyle. Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Here.
Commissioner Duda.
Here.
Commissioner Kraft.
Here.
Commissioner Morgan.
Here.
Mr. Chair.
Here. Item A is approval of the minutes of the Board of Equalization meeting held Tuesday, May 22nd, 2018. Item B, call for a meeting and set Tuesday, June 19th, 2018 as the date for hearing on certified assessment corrections. What's the will of the board?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Kraft, second by Commissioner Morgan. Please vote.
I will. Motion passes. Just to note, Commissioner Boyle's votes will not appear on the screen, but he voted yes, as well as the rest of the commissioners. Motion passes.
Item C is citizens' comments. This is an opportunity for citizens to comment on any material, on any item that is not officially listed on this week's Board of Equalization agenda. Are there any citizens' comments at this time? Seeing none, we have resolutions D through H. What's the will of the board?
Motion to approve.
There's a motion by Commissioner Kraft, seconded by Commissioner Boyle, and is that including adjournment?
And adjourn.
Thank you. Commissioner Boyle? Okay. Seeing no discussion, please vote.
I vote yes. Motion passes. All present voting yes.
Commissioner Boyle?
Yes, I appreciate that. A couple of meetings ago, I lost track now, I guess it's been two or 3 weeks, we had a couple of items on the agenda that the county board had no authority to actually to approve or to deny, and it's something we deal with all the time, and I'm very frustrated by it, and it came out, and during the course of that, I was, I think, rude to Mr. Goodwillie, and so I called him and apologized for a lot of reasons. One of them is it was inappropriate, and the other is that I have a great deal of respect for him. He is really knowledgeable and knows what he's doing. Really a real asset to the county and a great guy. So I called to apologize to him, and I also apologized to Ms. Badiato for mentioning that it was the responsibility of that office to bring these things, that it wasn't. And of course I blame Mr. Esch too. So anyway, I was kind of in a blaming mood. But it's not funny. I apologized to Mr. Goodwillie on the phone and told him I would do so in public, because years ago when I was in the mayor's office, I found it very annoying when people would, I had a really good, close, conservative Republican friend that we agreed with on a lot of things. But he would constantly blast me in the media. I mean, the World Herald and everywhere, just call me everything under the sun. And then he'd call and privately talk to me, and then he'd say, you know, I probably shouldn't have said that. And one time I got him because I had a reporter in the office when he called, and I always said to him, you know, I don't appreciate public tirades and private apologies. So I said, there's a reporter here, so why don't you tell him, which was really wonderful for me. But anyway, I didn't do the right thing, and I apologize to the people I offended. I really am sorry about that. You're a good guy. Keep it up.
Thank you. I think and I may need a motion to make a correction there that I forgot. I may need to reconvene this meeting to make a technical change that it shows up here. So with that, I may need to reconvene the Board of Equalization meeting technically. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Commissioner Kravitz, motion seconded by Commissioner Duda. The Board of Equalization, please vote.
Yep, we're ready.
Oh, yes.
Yep, motion passes, all present voting yes.
Okay.
Oh, they're not, oh, okay. Well, did you guys not?
I'm assuming you can say by consensus, we're good. Okay, item D, I need to correct. Item D, if you look in item 78, there's a correction of this number. The number needs to be corrected to Dan, I'm reading here from the list. From item D, the 2018 overvalued and undervalued properties for review and corrections by the County Board of Equalization. It goes into the items and then it goes down to the second page. And because it's cut off, it ends with 78, but it's the very last item on the second page. That number reads right now, it should read, from what I have, RL, and I can't see all of that, it's small print, but it should read 15-1297 -0000. I'm on item D. Yes. And if you go to the last page of the material presented, I have some documentation in front of me that they need to change that numbering. And matter of fact, I'll hand this over to you so you have it officially, but I just wanted to read it into the record. So if I can, we need to technically, I just wanted to put that in the record for that. That should change. Everything else is the same.
I guess I think we should maybe re-vote and to reapprove item D.
Teresa, you're at County Attorney's Office. Why don't we have a motion to make the change? And then just for clarity, are you speaking of the David Jones, the last item on
Danny, we got that paperwork, so if you can read it.
Yes, Teresa.
Thank you, Dan.
That is it. No, you keep it for the change. So, okay, with that, do I need to reconsider D and then reapprove it, or can I just move it as D?
Let's just have an amendment if
Okay.
the board is willing to do that.
Is there a motion to amend D in the Board of Equalization?
For purposes of a correction.
Yes.
Second.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Boyle, second by Commissioner Morgan. Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Yeah, I just have a question. It's a little confusing
Please.
as to what we're doing. So, under Board of Equalization, item B,
No, on the Board of Equalization, item D, the document.
D is in dog?
Yes,
Okay.
the documentation got hid. I had it here to look at it, got hid. There's a number correction that needs to be made in there, so it reflects in there and it's right for the record. So basically, nothing's changed. The number on the last item in that item for Mr. Brown needed to be changed. So that's what I need to change to put on the record. Other than that, nothing else is different.
so just so that folks in our listening audience know what we're doing, what is the item that we're changing?
Dan, you want to speak to that because you got the paperwork?
It's the parcel number. It's just, as I understand, just the incorrect parcel number was written in there. The documentation that was submitted to the board ahead of time, the correction didn't get down here until, I guess, today. So I think Commissioner Rogers just wanted to make sure we were approving the right the correction to the right parcel number.
Okay, and parcel number is kind of a technical address, right? Says
Yeah,
what the,
sure.
where the real
I
estate
mean,
is.
yeah, you
Right.
that's how you identify the parcel, or the property, I mean.
Okay, and again, I'm looking for it here, but there's a stack of stuff. And so what's the actual parcel that we're dealing with? I mean, is there an owner's name? Is there a valuation?
Yeah.
Is there?
Yeah, we got, so the owner name is David Jones, and the address stays the same. It's 3710 North 17th Street, but the parcel number, so if you look in column C, the parcel number says R18129700000. Well, what it should say is 1512970000.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, it's 3710 North what? I'm sorry?
17th Street.
17th Street. So none of the valuation or anything changes, right?
No, this change.
Yeah, the correction we're doing has nothing to do with the valuation. It's just the parcel ID number where it's
Okay.
making it correct, I guess. Yeah.
Now I get it. Okay,
Okay.
well, good.
There's a motion and a second to amend that. Please vote.
And Commissioner Rogers.
Yeah, I'm pushing. It's not going
Okay.
anywhere. I'll vote yes.
All right. Motion passes, all present voting yes.
Okay, technically, we need to adjourn. There's a motion to adjourn.
One moment, please. Okay, and may I get the motion, made the motion and second on that?
Commissioner Morgan, motion, Kraft, second.
Okay. Thank you. Please vote.
Technically.
Motion passes, all present voting yes.
All right, sorry for that. Now, back. We are called over to the Board of Commissioners meeting. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Borgeson is absent. Commissioner Boyle? Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Commissioner Duda? Commissioner Kraft? Commissioner Morgan? Yes. Mr. Chair.
Here, item 1, minutes and claims. Letter A is the approval of the minutes of the Board of Commissioners meeting held Tuesday, May 22nd. Letter B is approval of the claims submitted for payment and process through Tuesday, June 12th, 2018. It's the will of the board.
So moved for approval.
Motion by Commissioner Morgan, seconded by Commissioner Boyle. Please vote.
And Commissioner Rogers. Motion passes, all present voting yes.
Item 2 is the consent agenda. There's 15 items on the agenda. What's the will of the board? There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Duda. Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Thank you. I just have a couple questions on a couple of these items. In item F, we're approving a contract between Douglas County and the Fraternal Order of Police Lodge 8. And I understand that there have been some back and forth since our last best offer was put to them. So I guess I'd ask Marcos, if he could you tell us how that was resolved?
Commissioner Marco C. Martin, Douglas County Labor. The best and final offer that the board approved, that those discussions with the FOP 8, essentially we came to a resolution with those terms. So the best and final offer has been accepted, incorporated into the contract. We had to come up with appropriate language in the contract to reflect those best and final terms. And so you are seeing that document for approval in front of you today. I think that's the simplest way I can explain it. We just had to come up with the technical terms for various sections in the contract to reflect our best and final offer.
And those were agreed upon by us and FOP Lodge 8, is that correct?
Yes, Commissioner.
Okay. I have just a couple of other quick questions and informational more than anything else. On item G, we have the interlocal agreement between Douglas County on behalf of the Young Adult Court and the Office of Probation Administration in the Nebraska Supreme Court. And I know that that's an area that is of concern certainly to the chairman, and I was just wondering what, if anything, we are agreeing to. I know that the court administrator is here, and maybe he could shed some light on that for us.
Good morning, Doug Johnson, District Court Administrator. This agreement generally is an agreement between the state probation and the district court due to the fact that the probation folks manage the young adult courts. They're the ones that oversee it. So that's the relationship we have with them. There's no money, it's just a supervisory relationship.
And is this a renewal of a longstanding relationship that we've had?
And we've had this since 2005.
Okay,
6.
thank you.
Yeah.
And finally, I note that we have an item K, a resolution directing the chair to authorize and sign a short-term lease agreement with the Omaha Housing Authority for 90 days. And this is on per one of the county attorneys, who I don't believe is here, but I know that we've discussed this, and I'm just wondering if perhaps the county attorney could shed some light on what the purpose of this is. I'm interested in having this discussion in public as much as possible.
Teresa, you're at County Attorney's Office. What you have before you is a lease for the Omaha Housing Authority to lease back their current building. This board previously passed at a prior board meeting a purchase agreement to purchase that building. OHA has asked for a brief window of time to remain in that building, and this lease is a 90-day lease and then goes month to month. It's anticipated that they will be there for a short time, but would like the opportunity to remain there for that period.
And it begins and ends when?
It becomes effective upon the closing date when the board would purchase, when the county would purchase that property. That's located in paragraph number 3.
Do we have that date yet?
Closing dates are often a little bit fluid, and so I believe there's an anticipated date of on or around June 15th, but the actual effective date will be the date of close, whatever that actually is.
So then we'd be looking at 3 months from June 15th for OHA to remain as a tenant in a building that we would then own.
Right now it's a 90-day, so the short answer is yes, but then it goes month to month should they need another month or something of that nature.
Okay. And have we had discussions with them in terms of what they anticipate this period of time to be?
Yes, their attorney thought that 90 days to 120 days was reasonable. So rather than make it 120, it was made 90 with a month to month after that.
Okay. And they are seeking this because they're in the process of relocating. Is that right?
That's my understanding. Yeah.
As far as you know, have they closed on a relocation venue?
I don't believe that they have, but I don't have that information.
I see. And what is the amount that they would pay us per month?
That's also contained in the lease. You'll note it's in paragraph number 4. The monthly consideration is $1. However, this lease is a very unique lease in that it requires the tenant to be responsible for all utilities, maintenance, repairs, anything that the building would need during their tenancy in the building. It's my understanding from OHA that the utilities on average for 2017 were just over $4,100 per month.
Okay, so you're saying that the lease amount that they would pay to Douglas County would be $1 plus the utilities and maintenance costs?
They wouldn't be paying us the utilities. They would be paying directly the utilities and maintenance and things that the building would need.
Okay, so the lease, the rent would be $1, and the requirement would be that they pay all utilities and upkeep in addition to the $1. Is that correct?
Yes, I would direct your attention to paragraph 4 for the consideration. That's the monthly rent. And then also contained within the lease is the provisions that they would maintain and repair, which is contained in paragraphs, I believe, 8.
And
And 7 as well, 7 and 8, excuse me.
I'm sorry, say again?
Those are contained in paragraphs 7 and 8 regarding the utilities and maintenance and repair.
Okay. And that's the total of the consideration for this lease from them to us. They're not giving us anything else other than the dollar, and we'll take care of the utilities and the upkeep on the property. Is that right?
I believe that's accurate.
I guess I would ask that one be taken off. I'm not exactly sure how we get to a lease where somebody pays us $1. Maybe there's somebody here that can explain that to me, and remains in a building that we own. But if there is a good reason that we're essentially giving them a rent-free lease for 3 to 6 months, I'd like to hear it. I mean, I'm not aware of how we give rent-free leases to people, but is there any reason that we are not charging them any rent on this?
Commissioners, I can explain that if you would like. Patrick Bloomingdale, County Administrator. So the whole purpose of this arrangement was that OHA would be net revenue neutral in this transaction. They've been a tremendous partner all along during the discussions. They certainly didn't have to move, but they agreed to move and made it very clear that they would participate if it was basically revenue neutral to them. So the purpose of the lease is, given that they already have to continue paying for the utilities, $4,100 a month, and the maintenance, is that we would lease it for $1 so that this whole transaction and their agreement to cooperate in it would keep OHA as close to revenue neutral or revenue expense neutral as possible.
Okay. I guess I understand that. I don't know that we've ever had this public discussion on this particular matter, and as a result, I mean, I understand what you're saying. I'm not necessarily in agreement with the idea behind that, and so relative to this matter being on the consent agenda, I guess I'm not going to vote in favor of it, and I don't know if we take it off the consent agenda and vote on it separately. Or... Okay.
Commissioner Boyle.
Commissioner Kavanaugh, I appreciate your bringing this up, and this was, of course, being a real estate transaction, was discussed behind closed doors. According to the open meetings law, we're entitled to go behind closed doors when we're negotiating and so forth. So this was discussed the last time we met, and I understand, your zeal for public information. I share it, frankly, and I know other commissioners do as well. But it has to be done at a time when we don't trigger something bad happening to us because we do that. In any event, along these lines, we had a brief meeting, you and Commissioner Morgan and myself and our finance director, and you were encouraged to present an alternative. And P.J. Morgan was interesting. He talked about when he was a commissioner back in 1916, was it? No, anyway, it was back in the 70s when 23. The awful tunnel on 84th Street. The county board voted to build another awful tunnel. I didn't realize this. You remember that awful tunnel? Most of us do. That were on 84th Street. You couldn't even get 2 cars past hardly. The county board voted to build another one next to it. And PJ thought that was kind of strange, so he spent his own money to have an engineer come in and do a trestle plan, which he fought tooth and nail to get through, and that's what was built. So anyway, along those lines, we encourage Commissioner Kavanaugh, because he does have serious questions about this whole project, that he do the same. And he is going to, he's talked about doing it in front of his committee, which is up in 903, which doesn't get the kind of airing that this room does, for starters. And so I've encouraged him to do it here. Do it as an item on the agenda. Make your presentation here. Say all the commissioners are definitely here, all the people involved, and plus the taxpayers at home who aren't here can watch this on Cox and hear what you have to say and hear what the other commissioners have to say. I encourage you to do that. I hope that you will, because it will be really enlightening. It'll be helpful. And I like the idea that you're doing it. So, but I do thank you for bringing this up, and you've got good questions. I'll be voting for it because I have been involved in the meetings, and we talked about it, about the agreement to keep the housing authority whole, not to not to make them spend money because they were cooperating with us on the building, to keep them whole. And this is what that does, as Mr. Bloomingdale explained. It keeps them about as revenue and expense neutral as possible. So that's what this is all about. And we could probably dig back somewhere where we've done a dollar contract with someone, but they are a governmental body, of course, and there's even a state law that says that we can waive property taxes for them, which they asked once and we turned down. But so there's quite a good relationship between us, but maybe not as good as it could be. But anyway, in my book. But that's what's behind all this. So I appreciate you bringing this up, though.
Well, thanks for that explanation. I mean, I want to have this, as you indicated, as publicly aired as possible. That's why the committee hearings are being held. I think that, from what I understand, this board does not have a proposal, a plan that it is at this time going to put before the public. There have been discussions, as you indicated, in exec, but no plan to go forward in detail at all has been put before the public. And we get little pieces like this one and the others that we've had going forward. I appreciate that, and I understand a work in progress when I see it. The same is true in, I guess, my interest in holding hearings initially with stakeholders anyhow, to see, what, these are public, to see what, if any, needs that they have. I don't have an alternative plan, and I've been informed by commissioners on this board that there is no plan to be an alternative to. I have been communicated with by commissioners on this board who says, we don't have a plan, I'm not committed to any plan, there is no plan, so there can't be an alternative to something that isn't in existence. If there is a plan, then I think that we can have that discussion here. But like you said, in the example that was historical relative to the, I think it was the 84th Street Bridge thing, yeah. There was a plan, and then it was publicly out, and then an alternative was developed to that plan. All I'm doing with the committee hearings is talking to shareholders and saying, okay, what are the needs here? There's no plan A, and there is consequently no alternative plan B at this time to bring before the board. If we get to that stage, I welcome the opportunity to see the plan that members of this board want to have in front of the public and have that discussion. But that hasn't happened. It just hasn't happened.
Mr. Chair, may I respond? The difference, first of all, between that trestle example and this is that we still have a piece of property that is not in our hands, and we are still negotiating, and that's why it hasn't been presented publicly. We're in the process of attempting to obtain a piece of property, but that's why it isn't public, Jim. You've been told about it behind closed doors because it involves real estate, and we're entitled under the law to discuss that, so it doesn't cost us a whole lot of extra money because it's public. So that's why, and the plan, there is a plan, but it all is contingent on this, excuse me, this piece of real estate, which we haven't obtained. And commissioners have other ideas about what ought to be in the building and so forth, but I do want to emphasize too that all the parties involved have been contacted about the space they need, the county attorney, the public defender, the judges, all these folks have been talked to, all the juvenile support offices and so forth. They've all been involved, and they have hard actual square footage that they're talking about. So those things are moving along. But we don't have a plan to talk about because we don't own the property. And once we own the property, then you'll see it all on, but the public will see it all on. But this is not unusual. I mean, when this building was built, we tore down the security building, there was a finance, we tore down a whole block of things, and that, I'm sure, was not public until it was done. I don't know if it were a friendly purchase or condemnation, but that's where we are, and it's real normal to have this happen like this, and it's nothing sinister, nothing secret, but we're entitled to do this under the law, and we need to do this to protect the interest of the taxpayers so that we don't overpay for property, or who knows how it's going to come out. But I would encourage you, don't have those meetings in 903. You have the chance to do this in front of all the people here and all the people watching, and it's a great forum, and it's a much more public event. Commissioner Duda will back me up on this, we've gone toe-to-toe on having the Douglas County Health Center here, And I've lost repeatedly. We don't have it here, but I would like to, because I think has a good message and it would be a good thing to get on. I'm going to stop there, but please don't hold it in 903. Do it down here. It'd be
Well,
really helpful.
Oh, sorry.
Commissioner Kraft.
Yes. Excuse me. Right now, the plan is to acquire the property because property is not always available. You need to strike, we know we're going to need the property, whether it's for the attorney's offices or for the courthouse. We can do part of what our discussions had been on the property we have right now that we buy if we buy this building. If we don't buy this building, we're up a creek. So since it's available now, we need to, and it's not a hostile takeover, so to speak. That's the best kind. And we know we need property that's convenient to all the parties involved. So the plan right now is to acquire the property. Then, once the property is acquired, depending on whether or not we acquire additional property, we can decide exactly how the plan will play out. Thank you.
First of all, we were here last week, and at that time, Commissioner Kavanaugh, you talked about by buying these properties, we're committed or going to be spending $100 million. So you had to know of a plan or something when you talked about that, because I know those were the numbers that you threw out there several times last week when you went to 30, 40 minutes questioning our finance director, Mr. Lorenz. So, and at that time, we stated all we're doing is doing this property, and we're going to need a lot more information before we move forward with anything else. So there's been discussions, but I don't think anyone's really made that commitment, and there's much more information. But seeking these properties, I'm supportive of that. And I think it's a right thing for the future of the county, and the other 6 members voted to move ahead with doing exactly that. The second thing is, when Commissioner Boyle came to a finance, when we were talking about finance in Joe Lorenz's office last Tuesday afternoon, I think the two of you had lunch together, and Mike said that Commissioner Kavanaugh has an optional plan. That was his feeling. I immediately went to you, because you were still in the office here, the commissioner's office last week, and I said, come on into Joe's office, because Mike mentioned something that I thought maybe we should ask you about. And I said, I think if you have an option, we ought to look at all the options, and that's what I always like to do, is make certain that we look at every option. If Doug Kagan, that happens to be here, feels there's a better option for whatever we're doing, I want to hear about it. And you said, well, you were going to have a committee meeting. I said twice to your face in that office with Joe Lorenz and Mike Boyle present, please do it at the county board meeting, not at your committee meeting. And I told you I had a prior commitment for that day. I have to be in Atlanta. I leave tomorrow morning at 5:45. I showed Claire Duda my ticket this morning and come back tomorrow night. But in looking at a property for somebody in Texas, in Atlanta. So those are the facts of this, and I still wish you'd do as Commissioner Boyle has said, and some other commissioners, because I know some others can't be there supposedly, is what I've heard for that committee meeting. It'd be great to have that discussion here. You've criticized this last week, and I think to bring an option, as I did, is the right thing to do. And I hope you'll reconsider Mike's request and my request and others to just do it right here at our board meeting.
Okay,
If I
hold
can
on, wait,
respond.
you got to, and I mean a brief response, because
Okay.
it's been 40 minutes last week and there's nothing new coming out.
Okay.
So I mean, brief. Commissioner Kavanaugh.
as far as the 100 million number goes, Commissioner Morgan, I know that you're aware of the Juvenile Justice System Assessment and Court Space Needs Study dated January 2018 by DLR Group and Chin Planning that everybody should have. And in the original report on page 95, there were estimates of the cost of this project, and they were originally $81.1 million. Those were amended to $106.192 million. That's the plan. There is no alternative to that because there hasn't been any discussion. There hasn't been any DLR Group Chin Planning other than that. That's the discussion that I know that you're aware and we are all aware of, because that discussion keeps being had behind closed doors. So the only purpose of this, and I'm sorry if there was a miscommunication, but I've been pretty clear from the beginning of Commissioner Boyle's suggestion that I hold an administrative hearing committee hearings on these, is to have a public discussion. We have the transcript of that meeting. I'm happy to provide it with you, where it says, you got the committee of jurisdiction, hold a committee hearing on it. It's unfortunate that you're not able to be there for business reasons, but the point is, because it's a public committee hearing, a record is kept, a literal visual and transcript record has happened. And I often read transcripts of hearings that I'm not able to physically be at. That's why we keep records. I noted, I think that our record keeping, and I want to commend the clerk on this, is head and shoulders above, for instance, other public bodies in this building's records of important meetings on this topic. So, the idea that there is some alternative plan, I think, is probably a misnomer. There's no alternative plan until we have a discussion with the stakeholders in public, and with the public and public entities that may have interests about what are your needs, what are your perceived needs, what do you think is important for this community and this project. That's the only purpose of this. And if when you return, you want to see what was said and done there, there's a DVD for you, and there's a transcript for you, and you'll be able to watch it, as if you were there. That is the purpose of this discussion, is to discuss it with the interested parties in public relative to what we should do.
Jim, your point has been made.
Thanks.
Okay, let me make with the group's consensus, there was a motion and a second to approve the whole agenda, but with consensus, the group's consensus will remove item K. So with that, we'll vote on the consent agenda with the removal of item K. Please vote.
Motion passes, all present voting yes.
Is there a motion to approve item K? Motion by Commissioner Kraft, second by Commissioner Boyle.
And one moment, please.
Commissioner Morgan.
I'm going to abstain because even though there's no profit in the accountability and disclosure, issued a letter that I can vote, I'm still not going to vote on this because of an individual that works in our office is working with the Housing Authority at their request. So I will be abstaining from the vote on this matter.
Please vote.
Motion passes. Commissioner Morgan abstaining, Commissioner Kavanaugh voting no, all our commissioners present voting yes.
We'll go on to item 3, recognition and proclamations. Is Dale Rath here today? Dale's not, but I want to, item A is recognition, recognizing Dale Rath as he's retiring from the Douglas County Sheriff's Office after 28 years. I want to thank Dale for his years of service and appreciate the work and the service he's provided to the Sheriff's Department. With that, is there a motion to approve item A?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Morgan, second by Commissioner Kraft. Please vote.
Motion passes, all present voting yes.
Item 2 is a resolution recognizing U.S. Marshal for the District of Nebraska, Mark A. Martinez, for his years of public service, and declaring June 28, 2018 as Mark Martinez Day in Douglas County. Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Marshal Martinez is here, and if he'd come down, we'd like to formally read the resolution and present it to him. It's with great pleasure, I think, that we have an opportunity to recognize one of Omaha's remarkable citizens, right there. It's called the podium. Another South High grad, by the way.
There you go.
I've had the pleasure of knowing Mark and his family, all of his life and a couple of generations back, and there's not a finer South Omaha family around than the Martinez clan. So I'd just like to add my personal congratulations to this great man for all he's done for his family, his friends, and his community. And in recognition of that, the Board of County Commissioners of Douglas County, Nebraska resolved, whereas Mark A. Martinez was born in 1959 in Omaha to Alfred and Dolores Martinez, and in 1977 graduated from Omaha South High School, where in 2002 he was inducted into the South High School's Hall of Fame for his outstanding contributions to our community. And whereas he attended the University of Nebraska at Omaha and received a Bachelor of Science degree in 1982 and a Master's of Science in Criminal Justice in 1993, and would later work as an adjunct instructor. And whereas Mr. Martinez and his wife of 33 years, Cynthia, have raised 4 remarkable children, Maria, Grace, Rebecca, and Andrew, and enjoy a new grandson, Dominic. And whereas Mr. Martinez began his career in local law enforcement in 1983 at the Douglas County Crime Lab, and in 1984 joined the Omaha Police Department, where he would remain until his retirement in March 2009, first as a police officer, later as a sergeant, lieutenant, and as Omaha's first Latino captain and deputy chief. And whereas Mr. Martinez was elected and served on the Omaha School Board from 2003 to 2010, and whereas after serving decades in local law enforcement, Mr. Martinez was sworn in as U.S. Marshal for the District of Nebraska on January 13, 2010, after having been nominated to the position by President Barack Obama, and has served in that position for 2 4-year terms ending on June 8, 2018. And whereas during his nearly 35-year tenure in public service, Mr. Martinez has become a very well-respected and dedicated public servant in government and in the law enforcement community. And whereas Mr. Martinez has received numerous honors and awards throughout his career, including being named Hispanic Man of the Year by the Mexican American Commission and Award of Sacrifice from the Metropolitan Chiefs of Police Association, as well as the National Latino Police Officers Association Award for Community Service. And whereas he has devoted much of his life to his family and to public service, positively impacting his community, our residents, and the safety of all Nebraskans. Now, therefore, be it resolved by this Board of County Commissioners, Douglas County, Nebraska, that this board hereby expresses its sincere appreciation to Mark Martinez for his years of dedicated public service, congratulates him on his retirement, and furthermore does hereby declare June 8th, 2018 as Mark A. Martinez Day in Douglas County, dated this 5th day of June 2018, signed by Chris Rogers, Chair.
Good motion. That's a motion by Commissioner Kavanaugh, second by Commissioner Boyle. And Commissioner Boyle, you're up.
Well, I was going to add another whereas you're a great guy. I've known you all your life too, and your family, and I think the Gonzalez family's in there somewhere too, so we appreciate that clan as well. You've really served with distinction, and I've had occasion to be in your office, U.S. Marshal's office, and saw the kind of respect that you had from the men and women who reported to you, and I know of it personally. So I want to add my congratulations to what Commissioner Kavanaugh had put together. And your history of your family is just really over the moon, really great. So thank you for all you've done. Thanks.
Commissioner Kraft.
Yes, my family's known your family for a long time also. And my father was a friend of your father, and I knew your father and we've known each other a long time. First, I'd like to make a comment to Commissioner, or question to Commissioner Boyle. You said you were in his office. My question is, was it in cuffs or out of cuffs?
It was when I turned you in and had you watched.
Okay. And I will second the amendment of your other whereas. A great guy, a dedicated public servant, and I mean that in the most sincere of terms. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing none, Mark, all can be said, but I know you interrupted a political life to do your calling as law enforcement, but I'm sure you're not going to sit idle, so I hope you consider public office again at some point in South Omaha. With that, there's motion and second. Please vote and stay, Mark. We had a request to get a picture of this, so let's vote.
Could I address the board?
Sure.
Mr. Kavanaugh.
Wait a minute.
Roger remained silent.
Motion passed.
Well, just Commissioner Kavanaugh, I don't have your vote in yet. All right, motion passes. All present voting yes.
So you.
I just want to, Chairman Rogers and the rest of the board, appreciate this. Commissioner Kavanaugh, it's been an honor and a privilege to serve in law enforcement for as long as I have. My 8.5 years with the Marshal Service, it allowed me to grow personally and professionally. It's been a true blessing. I've been blessed beyond my comprehension. And for those of you that know my family, especially my parents, you know that I've stood on their shoulders for forever. Yeah, them and others, and so I have a lot of people to thank. And I want to thank all of you and the staff for what you do each and every day. Public office is not easy, but I certainly appreciate it. And to the Deputy Sheriff here, thank you for your service and be darn careful. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Mark, and from one South Old boy to another, congratulations.
Thank you.
Get up front.
I guess we're going around. Wait.
Chairman Rogers, while everybody's sitting, I've got to say, in my first ever county board picture, I kneeled a little bit so I wouldn't make everybody look short. Take a hint. You might want to think about that.
I'll bring a seat out. With that, we're going to move to item C, and that's a resolution recognizing Not On My Watch campaign, which is coordinated by the Women's Fund of Omaha and aims to educate the public about sex trafficking. This was put on by Commissioner Borges, and I'm going to read it on her behalf. Whereas commercial sexual exploitation is happening every day in Nebraska, with approximately 900 individuals being purchased for sex online every month. And whereas the Women's Fund of Omaha is committed to working with the community partners to stop sex trafficking by supporting survivors, increasing accountability for sex buyers, and preventing new and continued exploitation. And whereas the Women's Fund of Omaha is coordinating the Not On My Watch campaign to engage elected officials and community partners to raise awareness regarding the signs of sex trafficking and commercial sexual exploitation. And whereas the Not On My Watch campaign will send a strong message that sex trafficking will not be tolerated in Douglas County. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Commissioners of Douglas County, Nebraska, that this board hereby support the Not on My Watch campaign to raise awareness regarding commercial sexual exploitation and vows to work together to stop sex trafficking in Douglas County. Dated this 5th day of June 2018. Ma'am, if you want to speak, please.
Thank you. My name is Tiffany Seibert-Yakel, and I'm Research and Policy Director at the Women's Fund of Omaha. The Women's Fund engages in research and supports initiatives to improve the lives of women and girls in our community. As was read in the resolution, sex trafficking is happening every day. Approximately 900 individuals were purchased for sex online nearly every month. About 675 of those are in the Omaha area. So we are incredibly grateful to the board for considering this resolution. We are engaging in the Not on My Watch campaign in the month of June to raise awareness about the signs of sex trafficking so that people can, if you see something, say something. We are grateful to the Douglas County Sheriff's Office, to the County Attorney's Office, and prosecutors for working with the Women's Fund to stop trafficking together. We appreciate this resolution in advance of the press conference, which is June 14th, to kick off this campaign. You are all invited to join that press conference if you would like. We will certainly recognize the board for considering this resolution. We appreciate your support of this issue and for committing to stop trafficking together with the Women's Fund of Omaha. So thanks for your consideration today.
Is there a motion for this? Motion by Commissioner Boyle, second by Commissioner Morgan. And your point, I want to note, I know this personally got on my radar about 6 years ago when I was at a conference in California, and everything is opened up a little more. There was a meeting last week, and the one point I think is curious for the board to note, and I may ask Director Foxhall just to elaborate on it a little bit if he's aware of it, but there was a study, and they noted particularly jails. And I didn't think about this because I'm thinking you're locked confined, but they mentioned that jails are kind of this recruiting ground for individuals, for females for sex trafficking. So I thought that was a whole different level of awareness that, you know, us running to jail, you think of the mental health deal that we're dealing with, but this is the underlying deal that's in there. So I just thought that was a relevant fact to note. So
Absolutely.
with that, if we can vote, I know if you got a camera, if you want a picture, we can take one. If you don't, okay. So we'll vote and do the picture thing again. Please vote.
And I have a question. I assume jails also includes the youth center?
I have not heard specifically the youth center. I don't know, but this was a study particularly I was hearing that Dr. Sharon Rajaran had been working on at UNMC, and when she said that, I had to question it, but when she laid back the context of it, it talked about adult, not so much juvenile.
I can't speak to it specifically, Commissioner Kraft, but I would say that the commercial sexual exploitation industry is built on vulnerability and exploiting vulnerability. So anytime you have individuals or communities of individuals that are vulnerable, that may have a difficult time engaging in, you know, in accessing economic stability, you will have vulnerability for trafficking. So I would say absolutely, that's probably a place where we should be aware as well.
Okay.
Motion passes, all voting yes.
Thank you.
All right, let's
Thank
go
you.
around one more time. And lastly, item D, I'll turn over to Commissioner Morgan, is resolution remember former Douglas County Election Commissioner Dave Phipps and honoring his long career with Douglas County. Commissioner Morgan.
Okay, and as I said when I was putting this together, I think this is on behalf of all of us. So, whereas Dave Phipps, who was believed to be the longest-serving election commissioner in Douglas County's history, recently passed away at his home. And whereas Mr. Phipps was 31 when Governor Heinemann appointed him as the Douglas County Election Commissioner in 2005, and whereas Mr. Phipps, who served through December of 2015, spent more than 10 years as election commissioner and was reappointed in 2007 and again in 2011. And whereas Mr. Phipps had worked in the Douglas County Election Commissioner's office for 18 months before he was appointed in 2005. And whereas prior to his position with Douglas County, Mr. Phipps worked as political director for Republican Representative Lee Terry for Congress, and as an IT director for the Nebraska State Treasurer's Office. And whereas Mr. Phipps was a graduate of Wayne State College and was passionate about political science, economics, and emerging technologies, therefore be it resolved by this Board of Douglas County Commissioners that this board hereby remembers Mr. Dave Phipps for his dedication to public service, his longtime career as Douglas County Election Commissioner, and further expresses its sincerest condolences to Mr. Phipps' family upon his passing at a very young age, dated the 5th day of June 2018. So I appreciate all of you and your support, and I know he was a great public servant there.
That's a motion by Commissioner Morgan. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Duda. Commissioner Boyle.
I just want to make a brief comment. Dave and I had a really good relationship. He was a really very good election commissioner, and we're of opposite parties. He was a very good humor and always willing to listen to suggestions, and I always listened to him tell me about how bad the building was repeatedly. But anyway, he was a very nice guy. I had a wonderful relationship. He did like steak. We used to go to lunch quite a bit. So of course I do too. So he will be missed. He was a class act, and I'm very, very saddened by his death.
We have a motion second. Please vote.
Yes.
Motion passes, all present voting yes.
Item 4 is citizens' comments. This is an opportunity for citizens to comment on county board related items that are not officially listed on the agenda. Are there any citizens' comments at this time? Seeing none, we'll go on to item 5 in presentations, the 2018 Douglas County Fair presented by Matt Gunderson. Mr. Gunderson.
Good morning, Matt.
Good morning.
Mr. Chairman, good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Wanted to give you an update. We said that we would give an update to the fair once we kind of had the contract in place and had a period to be able to get it activated and up and going. And so wanted to give you that update for things today. Yep.
Please state your name.
Sure. Matt Gunderson. I am chairman of the Friends of Extension Foundation and chair of the advisory board for the Douglas County Fair. And I'm going to upload this the way it looks to the presentation. Did not make it in this morning. Douglas County Fair Commission presentation. Thank you. My apologies for the delay. Wanted to kick off with a new revised logo for the fair along with the tagline. The Douglas County Fair's new tagline is "Where Urban and Rural Meet." And so as we talked before in the proposal to the county board about looking at the fair has something for everybody. The tagline, where urban and rural meet, really fit, that the fair can be something for everybody no matter what your roots are within Douglas County and outside of the county even. The fair logo was actually designed by a current Douglas Sarpy County 4-H'er, and thought it was a great depiction for his interpretation of the tagline, where urban and rural meets, with the skyline and the bridge in the background with the rolling hills looking basically east towards the city. The fair's mission statement has been updated as well to read as to hold an annual event where urban and rural meet to showcase agriculture, education, and industry areas, certainly while recognizing its heritage. The fair does have a long heritage of 137 plus years of existence in Douglas County, and so we do want to recognize that heritage, but along with that, bridge around the urban and rural meeting tagline with that, and talk about it from a vision standpoint where urban and rural can meet and understand the importance of food fiber industries as well as the businesses that essentially produce them. And so if you think of it from a pathway to careers perspective with that, the values as it comes around to things then is to educate the public on agriculture, education, and the industry areas by showcasing agricultural production. That coming in the form of what production that happens not only in Douglas County, but in the state of Nebraska, as well as showcasing water and food safety, those industries that are in Douglas County that promote those industries, talking about consumer choices and having those choices available to you when you shop for food, showcasing youth education as part of that educational front, and really, again, showcasing the industries and the areas that it serves. It's the pathway to careers around that, showing exactly what it takes that you can go to UNO, you can go to UNL, you can go to Metro Community College and have a successful career tied in to industries that support it. You don't have to go to college to major in agriculture. You can have an accounting degree, IT, legal, and still work for a company or work in an industry that supports agriculture. One-third of the agriculture, one-third of the economy in the greater Omaha area is tied to agricultural companies and agricultural production. So that certainly comes in with that. The makeup for things for the advisory board for the fair is there's a chair and a vice chair. The vice chair is Eddie Beaver, longtime Douglas County Fair supporter. I serve in as chair. We have 4 members of our Extension Foundation board that's serving on it, 2 general community volunteers, as well as a UNL Extension Douglas Sarpy County unit leader, and then we have special representatives, including some sponsors, legal counsel for the fair, ag education front, media public relations, logistics that go into planning the fair, as well as 2 the commissioners and Commissioner Kraft and Duda that also attend those meetings. Some of the highlights for the fair is the fair and the Extension Foundation was able to secure complimentary office space to be able to have a physical site to house out of, just paying for the operating expenses. There's no rent on that, and was able to secure free donated office furniture along with copies and monitors to be able to have the fair and to be able to put that on and be able to have the public come in to be able to meet that. To date, we've raised more than $30,000 in sponsorships. That is including a cash and in-kind contribution for that. One of the things in the proposal was talking about a fair campus concept. And that concept really was multiple locations in the same vicinity that would have free parking and shuttles, because it's difficult to be able to do everything that a fair can encompass without having a large enough footprint site to do it in, also containing expenses to do that. And so we are doing that out on the fringes, if you will, of where urban and rural meet in western Omaha, western Douglas County around that, with locations at Village Point for some of the events. Metro Community College was gracious enough to supply their Elkhorn Valley campus for parking. And then Chance Ridge Event Center out on Skyline Drive will also serve as events for that. There'll be free shuttles and free air-conditioned buses to transport between those locations. Dates for the events of the fair really occur July 13th through the 15th at those locations. We do have some pre-events planned to prepare for the actual event kickoff. Exhibits are entered on Tuesday, July 10th. They'll be judged on the Wednesday 11th. And we'll finish setting up the displays for public viewing on July 12th. and the event will run Friday through Sunday, the 13th through the 15th, and we'll tear down the evening of the 15th for things. We have a kickoff and ribbon cutting planned out at Village Point in the amphitheater on Thursday, July 12th at 6 p.m. You all will receive invitations to attend that ribbon cutting and kickoff for the fair as well. We are also going to be doing a parade on Saturday morning out at Village Point to kick things off there. Some of the activities that we have are we're working with UNL Extension to have extension and research-based information and interactive areas and presentations around the topics you see there. We're also using events to draw out of county-focused events through junior youth livestock shows to attract folks in from outside of Douglas County, as well as Douglas County resident focused across the different divisions. Who has the best quilt in Douglas County, who has the best photography exhibit, who has the best steer in the Douglas Sarpy County 4-H program type of situation at that point in time. We're also doing event-focused items around your typical stuff you'd find at a fair, from exhibits around those topics you see there, animal events, equine events, and the parade around it. Specifically at Village Point. Village Point was very kind enough to give the fair complimentary storefront space. And that storefront space may rotate each year depending upon what their availability of store tenant space and availability is. But that's going to house the exhibits and the demonstrations out at Village Point. We are looking at 4 locations for 2018. We're going to have a space tied to the exhibit hall that would house the static exhibits and the on-site office for the fair at Village Point location. We're going to have an urban and rural initiatives spot within Village Point tied around Edgerton Explorant for STEM education topics. We're going to have UNL Extension displays and interactive displays and items, as well as some other activities in that space. We're also going to have an ag pavilion talking about for youth and young kids, Farmer Phil, talking about agriculture, food production, jobs that you can go into around that, have some indoor stage activities, as well as some agricultural activities with that. The fair is partnering with the Nebraska Farm Bureau Foundation, and specifically the Ag in the Classroom program they run, to be able to put the educational efforts together with that. And then for anybody that has a sweet tooth, we're partnering with the longtime Omaha Area Sugar Arts Cake Decorating Society. And so we have a space we're going to call Cake Couture, and you can see their sugar art show as well as their cake decorating classes in those 4 spaces. The parade on Saturday morning is going to run what I term as the Main Street area of Village Point. You can see on the map there, there's a center promenade around the circle. It'll start at 9 a.m. that morning, finish by 10. The stores in Village Point open at 10, so we'll get it going before that comes and not tie up any more parking. We'll probably deem it as the shortest parade route in the county. It's going to be about 3 blocks, so it would be an easy walk and stroll down for that. So it's a great opportunity for walking floats. Groups we're going to look to reach out to, of course, elected officials, high school bands, Shriners, Scout troops, dance squads, local businesses. We've kind of timed it to be in that 45-minute length, so it's not going to tie up a large portion of the day or the facility to make that happen. So we'll have some limited entries around what that looks like. We're also going to utilize the Village Point Amphitheater with live music on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday evenings, as well as possibly Sunday afternoon. We're going to have community groups and education also on that stage and amphitheater area from 10 to 5 on Saturday and noon to 5 on Sunday. Examples we're looking at would be dance troops, quartet. If Commissioner Duda would like to have a calling contest, we can do that. If you want to have a commissioner challenge to that calling contest, we can probably make that happen as well. We're also have a backup plan of some vacant storefront space to kick that off with. Again, Metro Community College, our thanks to President Schmazel and their board for taking the action item up to allow to have use of their parking lot facility at the Elkhorn Valley campus. There'll be about 650 spots there, and so we're trying to get folks to park there, catch a free air-conditioned shuttle every 10 to 15 minutes that'll rotate between Village Point as well as Chance Ridge Event Center. So you don't have to go to Village Point, unload the kids, the stroller, have the experience, load them back up in the car, go to Chance Ridge, find a spot. You can park in one spot, load things up, go and come back to your vehicle. We hope it'll be a little easier for families than trying to get kids in and out of car seats and things that go with that. At Chance Ridge, we're going to have what we're going to term as the VIA experience, very important animals. We're going to have set times where it's an interactive time with animals, and we're doing educational displays and signage around what that looks like in terms of the industries that support that, pathway to careers, as well as just an up-close experience with those animals. It'll be a 2-hour time slot, so from noon to 2, meet this particular animal. The signage will be around that, and we'll swap that out. We'll also have some agricultural displays to talk about what it costs to produce food today from an equipment standpoint, to sheer cost of marketing and what that looks like and how you can get into careers, again, around those fields. We're looking at trying to get, not sure if we'll get it all done or not, but we're going to try to have a mobile lab. That's a 53-foot fully enclosed trailer with flat screen TVs to talk about agriculture and STEM education. We're kind of term as a mobile science lab, if you will, and tie in some pathway to careers there as well. Saturday, we'll have a cattle and goat shows. There'll be all be youth shows. There'll be a stall from your trailers. We're trying to look at doing some educational clinics that day. Shows at 11. Then we're researching Saturday night to potentially host a barrel racing event. Sheep and swine shows then on Sunday. Those are the events that we're really looking at attracting out-of-town visitors to come in for the time period to be able to do that and the day and make a weekend of it, if you will, in the community. Just some additional information for things as we have secured panels, gates, barrels, parking items, those things that you see there, to be able to continue to put on a great display of the fair for the various areas, along with the mobile lab. We are on the internet. You can go to douglascountyfair.org for the website. That will be launching live basically today and tomorrow. We are also on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at the links you see there, and we're on Snapchat as well. So we're going to have a robust social media experience between Village Point, the fair, Chance Ridge Event Center, as well as some media and public relations partners that go with that. 2019, the fair has already been approached by a venue in western Douglas County that would be a bigger location for potential growth and opportunities that could go with that. And so we've done a lot, I believe, in a short order from end of November formal approval till now. Give us a year, and we're looking for that growth to be able to happen with things further, with more planning. We do have an interim fair director in Vernon Waldron, who former retired UNL program leader, unit leader from the office, as well as 2 interns, both of which are former Douglas Sarpy County 4-Hers that are helping in the office for the summer to work with that. So that is a short and quick synopsis of what has been done to the fair to date to make that happen. We're fairly proud of where things have come in the short time period for things. We'll continue to track visitors and numbers, because I know that's always been important, especially to Commissioner Boyle, in terms of what attendees and attendance looks like and impacts that are had with that. And so we will continue to track that as well as we look to that. I know your time is valuable, but I certainly would entertain any questions from the board at this time.
Commissioner Kraft and Commissioner Boyle.
Yes, would you please put back the screen of additional information so people will have time to write down the links, should they want it?
You bet.
Okay. And would you give us a phone number that somebody can call if they'd like to call and talk to anyone?
Yes, that is going to be 402. Vernon's going to pull that up. I don't have it quite memorized yet. I'll apologize. It's either 516, 512, but we'll get it right here.
While Vernon's getting that, Commissioner Boyle, you want to ask your question?
Excuse me, yes. I wanted to ask, your source of funding is 262 money, the Convention Visitors Bureau, is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
Okay, and, sorry, what, did you request one for this coming year, and have you been awarded anything?
It's tied to the multi-year contract approved by this board in November.
That's $60,000, is that right?
It was $125,000
A year?
A year.
Okay, and that's all visitor improvement funds, or whatever it is?
Yes.
Okay, good. I wanted to ask, the use of the name always concerns me. When it says Douglas County Fair, it's not sponsored by Douglas County. Is it UNL Extension that is the primary sponsor?
It would be, the primary sponsor would be the Friends of Extension Foundation, which is a 501c3 foundation.
Could you put that down at the bottom of that Douglas County Fair where urban and rural meets, sponsored by?
Yes, so actually we're doing that in all of the promotional materials that it's managed by the Friends of Extension Foundation.
All right, and the other thing I'm always concerned about is liability. I want to make sure, I mean, the name is there, Douglas County, and I don't
Sure.
want people to think this is a governmental function, and I don't want to be sued. I'd like to be sure that we have legal counsel is making sure that in our contract with you that you're agreeing to hold us harmless. The only trouble is I don't know how deep your pockets are and if you have insurance, if you can afford
Sure.
it.
So that was all spelled out in the actual signed contract and agreement and what those needed to be. Per the contract, actually, the insurance had to be enforced before the contract could ever be signed. And so the county is listed at those coverage levels. We have specifically hired an event insurance company that specializes in fair and exposition event coverage to be able to meet the parameters outlined in those contracts with the estimated number of visitors and everything tied to that. So that is in place.
Are you going to have any amusement rides?
No.
Okay, that's good. Okay,
we figured if they would like to ride a Ferris wheel, they could utilize Shields at Village Point.
That's a good idea, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Commissioner Kraft.
Yes, I thought when Commissioner Boyle wanted to talk, he was going to volunteer for the dunking tank. So since he didn't, I will volunteer him.
The dunking tank.
Or the high dive into the 5-gallon bucket. I think this looks like a very good and sound plan. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I will, Mr. Chair, if I may, I'll give that phone number to
Please.
Commissioner Kraft's question.
Please.
The phone number that the public can contact the fair at is 402-516-5826. 402-516-5826. Or the other number they may call is 402-237-9403. Again, 402-237-9403.
And when they call, how will those phones be answered?
So they'll be answered by the staff, and if there's a voicemail set up on each one of those phones so that they can leave a message, and then those phones, are portable and will be with at the event. So they can even call that number during the event, and they will be on-site answered.
So what will the person who answers it say when the caller is calling in so they know they've got the right phone number?
It would be Douglas County Fair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Duda.
Thank you. This is exciting to me. When we talk about the 137-year history of our county fair and watching the evolution, and frankly, Commissioner Boyle, you've played a big role in how we are moving forward. I mean, there's no property tax dollars in the fair anymore. This has been an ongoing thing for years as we've watched this evolve. And I have huge appreciation and respect for our kind of ragtag board that we've had for the last several years that kept the fair going. They were very driven, very motivated. They had some struggles. I have a lot of respect and appreciation for what they did. This is the new era we are evolving into, and to me, this is just so exciting that to see all of what's being offered here. We've got a wonderful group doing, I think, some great things, and not one nickel of property tax dollars going into this fair. I'm excited about it. I think you guys are doing a wonderful job. I'm thrilled to see the fair not only continuing, but I think prospering. I think it's going to thrive and flourish under your leadership, and I have nothing but great excitement about what's coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good job. With that, we'll go to public hearings. Item A is a hearing for a zoning regulation text change. Application submitted by the Douglas County Environmental Services. Text change request amend Article 8.05 FF/FF Flood Fringe / Floodway Overlay District. Doug.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Doug Cook, your Douglas County Planner. So today, presented to you, this is a floodplain regulation text revision, and it's about agricultural buildings in the 100-year flood fringe, not the floodway. So the map you see in front of you there, the dark blue is the floodway. That's non-buildable. The area we're talking about today is the light blue. That's what I call the 100-year flood fringe, which is buildable with stipulations. So there are two options presently to put up an accessory building in that light blue area. One of them is you don't want to elevate, that's fine, but you're limited to 400 square feet, not a big building, and you also must provide louvers to let the water flow in and flow out. The other option is you do elevate, and the lowest floor has to be a foot above the base flood elevation. Now, the base flood elevation is the height of the water during the 100-year storm. And so your lowest floor would have to be 1 foot above that. Recently, the staff has received an inquiry from a Western Douglas County resident, and we have developed a third option. This option incorporates comments and reviews by federal, state, and local agencies, and they're all on board. It provides flexibility to property owners by allowing non-habitat ag structures while meeting the spirit and intent of our longstanding flood regulations. Specifically, there's 3 areas that are changing. First one is a cleanup item. We're updating the map references. The second one is, if we're going to talk about ag buildings, you define ag buildings. So it creates a definition for ag buildings. And then thirdly, the most important part is there's a list of 13 criteria that you would be able to build a non-habitable agricultural structure in the 100-year flood fringe, provided you meet those 13 criteria. And they were in your packets. They were a part of the Planning Commission minutes. As this is a text change, if approved, it applies throughout the county, not any one individual owner, but many, many individual owners, all within where you see the pretty colors there, which is the property under jurisdiction of the county planning department. The Planning Commission recommended unanimous approval on a 6-0 vote back in April. They asked that you concur with that recommendation, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Commissioner Moore.
Yes, Doug, thank you. That was an excellent presentation. And I'm curious, because I believe in the past, there have been, I'm not sure who was responsible for it, but I know like 144th and Industrial Road and a little bit south toward Q Street, where Superior Honda and Acura are located, in some areas across the street from them on 144th, went from, a good designation for the buildings that were there to one that was in a floodplain, and I don't know how that affects their insurance or affects anything for that matter, but I'm really curious, who told you this? What authority gave you the information? Was it you, or was it the NRD, or FEMA, or somebody else that said this is what it is? Where'd you get that information? The blue areas and the light blue.
Oh, on that first slide?
Yeah.
That is from our DOGIS map, and Mike and Steve and Natalia upstairs. This map comes from FEMA. So
Okay.
The FEMA map has been transposed, so to speak, on our GIS system.
Okay. What, FEMA has changed the boundaries of these in the past in other parts in Douglas County, I believe. And I'm curious, is that light blue area where agricultural buildings or whatever area it is that would maybe be allowed to be built, is there any lower designation than what it has? I mean, could it ever turn into floodplain or lower?
Well, this is how and everyone, it seems like everyone I talk to has different words as to how they describe like the floodway and the flood fringe. I describe the light and the dark blue area together as the floodplain.
Okay.
And then the dark blue then would be a subset of that, which is the floodway.
Right.
And then the second subset would be the 100-year flood fringe, which is the light blue.
Okay, is there anything like a 50-year floodplain? What I'm driving at, is there any other category lower than, are more dangerous than we have right now?
No, the floodway is the most dangerous.
Okay, so they can't downgrade it anything further. The only thing that happened is it'd be underwater, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's fine. I can understand, and I'm wondering too, I understand that, but what about the volume of buildings? I mean, if you allow a whole host of buildings and pretty well compact, wouldn't that be a disaster if, in the making, if there is a flood and all those buildings wash down?
Yes, it would be.
Okay.
And that's why the 13 criteria, that's why
Okay.
there are 13 criteria. You'll note that you, if this proposal is approved, you still would have to elevate your building.
Oh, okay.
But only to 40% of what is required. So let's say, according to FEMA, you need to elevate your building 4 feet above the existing ground. With the 40%, now you will only have to elevate less than 2 feet of that. You still would have to put louvers in. So what we're saying is, you can't build it on the ground completely. You still have to elevate partially. And the other thing is, which I think is crucial, is you must tear down or remove existing non-compliant buildings, and you can replace that square footage with your new building. So it does not open up, let's say, Commissioner Boyle, you and I are neighbors. You're a longtime farmer. You have a bunch of old barns that have been there since the 30s, way before FEMA. They're dated, you'd like to take them down. You could take them down, claim some of that square footage to allow you to put up a building that has to be elevated, not maybe 6 feet, but 40% of that.
Right.
I'm your neighbor. I built my house and I had in a barn within 10 or 15 years ago. I could not put up a new building. Use this criteria because I'm not taking anything down.
Okay.
There's the joy of the proposal. We're working with FEMA, we're getting rid of non-compliant old structures, and we're allowing a new structure, still elevated to some point. So it clearly does not open up the county to all kinds of ag buildings in the light blue area. It does not do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Let me just know for the record, this is, we are in a public meeting. I didn't officially open it, but we are, so, seeing no further commissioners' questions, is there anybody that wants to comment on this item? We are in public hearing. Seeing none and seeing no more questions from the board, we'll close the public hearing. What's the will of the board? Motion by Commissioner Boyle, second by Commissioner Duda. Please vote.
Motion passes, all present voting yes.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Item B, provide additional budget dollars for the budget increase to capital improvements in the district court, treasurer's office, county attorney, and risk insurance groups. Increases budgets to the budgets for the inheritance tax fund and the health center fund. With that, I'll open the public hearing and turn it over to Joe Lorenz, our finance director.
Thank you, Commissioner. This is the second supplemental budget hearing that we have during a year, and this is what we do to, in this one, is really have take the budget supplements that'll get us to June 30th, which is, just a little over 3 weeks away. And this year, the number looks, when you first look at it, it looks like a very big number at $11,610,000. But 11 million of that is really kind of directly attributable to two funding operations, which I'll explain first. The first thing we would do is to increase the budget of the inheritance tax to allow a $4 million transfer from the inheritance tax fund to the capital improvements fund of the general fund. And so what we're doing is increasing both the inheritance tax budget and the capital improvements budget by $4 million. And we're taking the $4 million, transferring it from inheritance tax to capital improvements, and then increasing that by $4 million. And that is really to fund the purchase of properties that have been identified for future expansion for county operations. So those two transactions account for $8 million. Then the second major transaction is a $3 million increase, and that's due to because July 1st we're going to have a new separate fund for the Community Mental Health Center. And so what we have to do is the health center fund itself is well funded, but we're creating a new fund. So we're moving $3 million from the health center fund to the community health center fund to essentially fund it to begin operations on its own July 1st. And so that would require a $3 million increase to the health center budget to allow that transfer. So those two transfers, like I say, are basically funding transfers and account for $11 million. Then the second portion is the budget supplements to the departments, most of which will require this money to really get through to June 30th in terms of their budget, and I'll go to those in detail. The first is $200,000 to district court, and this is driven by increased caseloads and jury costs incurred by the district court this year. Second is $175,000 to the treasurer's office, which is driven by two significant IT system update projects. As you know, the treasurer's office had been written up in several of our financial audits as in terms of their cashiering system and their financial tracking system. So there was this year we spent and undertook a significant Oracle project to bring everything up into the general ledger there, and also we improved and upgraded the iNova cashiering project for the treasurer's office. So those two significant projects really drove this $175,000 supplemental request. Third is $100,000 for the county attorney, driven by increased caseload, which I think most of the commissioners are familiar with what's been going on in the county attorney's office. Next is $100,000 for workers' compensation settlements, which have been significantly in excess of our budgeted amounts. And we, as you remember, the last session we increased the county attorney's budget by $100,000 to set up a specialist for handling workers' compensation cases. The next amount is $35,000 for emergency management, and this does have a federal revenue grant offset, and this was additional funding that emergency management received that they using to fund some additional projects. So we have to increase the budget by $35,000, but there is a revenue offset for this one. Then there's also two salary adjustment transfers, which were overlooked when we did the salary adjustment transfers in March. These people, the people in the district court and the juvenile court received their raises on January 1st, but their budgets did not get increased. So this is just increasing those budgets to reflect those salary increases. And that's funded from the salary adjustment fund. And that's basically it. That's how we get to the amount. So I'd be glad to answer any questions regarding any of these supplemental requests.
This is an opportunity for anybody to comment now. We are in public hearing. Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Thank you. Mr. Lorenz, just a couple of quick questions. So the $4 million transfer from the inheritance tax fund to the general fund is to purchase properties for future county needs. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And we're actively engaged in that purchase right now. As a matter of fact, we discussed one earlier we're just waiting on closing. Those are the properties we're talking about, right?
Yes.
Okay. And I think that Commissioner Boyle has expressed, and I kind of share this, the strategic idea that we should acquire properties around the periphery of our footprint as we look forward to future needs and expansions. And this is part of that. And I think that's a forward-looking idea. I think he pointed out some examples of missed opportunities that we might have had in the past of properties that we could have acquired. But this $4 million from inheritance to general funds is for specifically already identified properties that we were talking about essentially as part of that juvenile justice center issue. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, if we take $4 million out of the inheritance tax fund, what does that leave a balance in the fund at?
Because the fund this year has had proceeds in excess of its projected amount. As a matter of fact, as of last Friday, the proceeds received were $4.6 million above the projected amount for it. This is in effect taking that excess amount, so it will still leave the inheritance tax funded in that about $8 to $10 million range, that we will then use the majority of that to fund for uses in next year's fiscal budget, as we typically do.
I got you. And after we do the transfer there, for this particular item, are we transferring anything else, like from reserves or anything else, or is it specifically all coming from the inheritance tax for this particular item?
This is just this, because we had the year with greater than expected proceeds in inheritance tax, where we're able to fund the purchase of these properties solely from inheritance tax reserves.
Okay. There's nothing coming out of reserves, so do you have a current reserve level number that you could share with us?
Yeah, I think the last I looked earlier this week, it was $29 million.
Okay. Thank you.
See no further questions? Again, we're in public comment. Any public comment? Seeing none, we'll close the public meeting. What's the will of the board? Motion by Commissioner Boyle, second by Commissioner Morgan. Please vote.
Motion passes, all present voting yes.
Commissioner Boyle.
I'd just like to make a comment thanking Mr. Lorenz and others who have been involved in this. It's a very clear and rational transfer that's necessary, and I appreciate the detail. Thank you.
We'll go to committee reports and item 7, Finance Committee, Commissioner Morgan and Boyle.
Yes. Joe Lorenz will have a budget meeting. I'm not sure if we have an executive session today.
We do.
We do. So right after that, we'll see how long that goes, and then go right up to 9:03. I think at Joe's request, that he has some items to discuss, and that'll be an open meeting. Okay. Anything, Joe, besides that, or Mike?
Nope. And there was public notice of that, wasn't there? I didn't see it.
Yes, it's scheduled 11:30.
Yeah.
Okay, good deal. Thanks.
All right, we'll go to the Human Resource Report and Weekly Personnel. The Weekly Personnel Report for Civil Service is as noted. 2, there are no legislative items, but I note that the board to note the email that was sent out by Karen for some dates in September for possibly legislative visits. So if you can respond to that, I appreciate it. With that, we do have executive session for purposes of litigation and negotiation. Under legislative, Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Sorry. Just to follow up on those committee, I understand that we have a Child and Youth Services Committee meeting today as well at 1 p.m. And then the Administrative Services Committee meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. will be at 9:03 as well, regarding the County Attorney and Public Defender space needs, public property update, Juvenile Justice Center, strategic planning, and other business. That's public hearing at 9 a.m. tomorrow.
With that, again, we do have a need for executive session for litigation and negotiation and labor. That's negotiation. Okay. With that, is there a motion to go into executive session? Motion by Commissioner Boyle, second by Commissioner Morgan. Please vote.
Motion passes, all present voting yes.
And as stated, we're going to executive session for litigation and negotiation.
And I'll assume Chris is a yes. And Commissioner Kavanaugh, you're a yes? Yes, okay. Motion passes, all present voting yes.